So obviously you end up going to Boston College. So first time, so I'm going to tell my first ever finding out who Luke Kuechly was. So obviously being in the ACC at the time, I'd follow Miami, living in Charlotte, ACC country. And I'm watching a Miami game. I think it was your last year there. So you would have been a junior, right? Mm-hmm. When you picked sixth Miami?
Yeah.
That was your last year there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching the Miami game. They're playing Boston College. I don't really particularly know a lot about Boston College currently, but I know they got this white kid, number 44, that's running around and he makes every tackle. But I'm like, okay. I mean, he's a good player. He makes a lot of tackles, but whatever. And then he picks six Miami, and every kid on Miami, as he was running to the end zone, not only were they not catching him, they were getting further away from you as you're running. And I'm like, holy shit, this fucking white kid is flying. So I don't think anything of it. Now, fast forward to the off season, I'm in the weight room working out. And at the time you would bring in guys for, I guess they still do this, right? Like pre-draft visits. So all of a sudden this kid walks in with like some of our scouting directors and whatnot. And he walks in, I think you had glasses on. You were like dressed really nice. You'd had like a button down or a sweater or something. I'm in the weight room lifting, and Luke comes over and they introduce, hey, this is Luke Kuechly from Boston College. He's here on a visit. So we shake, we talk, mingle for a little bit, and he walks away. So I call one of the scouting guys over after Luke leaves. I'm like, hey, tell me about that kid. Because now all of a sudden this image of him pick sixing Miami pops back into my head. I'm like, how good is he? Like, I'm like, we're looking at him as the number one pick. What were we, 10, 11? What we picked? 9
that year, yeah.
So I'm like, we got a top 10 pick. I'm like, we're going to take that kid? They're like, Greg, he not only was the best defensive player in the ACC, he was the best player, period, in the entire conference, and arguably the top handful of players in the entire country. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. They're like, I promise you, this kid is I'm like, okay. So we draft Luke at 9. And I remember seeing him at his first practice. And I was like, oh my God, this was what it must have been like a couple years before I got to Chicago with Urlacher. He was the fastest guy in the field. He knew where every ball was going to go. But little did I know when I met him in the weight room that day, like, I was like, yeah, I'm sure he's a great player. And I was like, holy shit, we're taking this kid at number 9. And he goes on to be the defensive rookie of the year, defensive player of the year, and arguably the best player in the history of the franchise. So that was our experience meeting Luke Kuechly.
Well, I walked in, I remember what I wore. I wore a pair of like khaki pants. I had a red and white checkered button down shirt, my glasses, and an afro. And Greg, you're probably like, man, we're going to interview this guy. He's going to work upstairs. He's going to be our scouting, he's going to be a scouting intern.
I mean, I knew you were good because, again, I had that image of that play you made against Miami. And I knew from just like following draft stuff that like you were a first round guy and like a legit dude. You made like 7,000 tackles, set NC records, whatever it was. So like I knew you were good. I don't know if I knew you were like a top 10 pick and then, of course, went on to do what you did. But like I think back to that first time meeting you in the weight room and I'm like, little did we know. That little.
You had a beanie on. You had a beanie on too. I remember that.
Always. How good were our moments in the weight room?
Oh my gosh,
Will you ever trade those days in?
No.
Tell everybody our off-season summer program.
Just go outside, get fast, bomb burritos, speed stuff. So we had our 4-day split. So we had our linear day was at the end with the pulleys. We had our all of our change of direction stuff. And then we had all the hurdle drills, like that stuff was like on Mondays. And then we'd come in and then you'd always have to walk in with your shirt off because we were sweating.
Had to walk in with your shirt off. That was mandatory.
Kings of Leon all day.
Music blasting. And we would just come in
the weight room and just crush.
And we would just know that on that given day, it was the best shape we'd ever be in. And then throughout the course of the season, we would just get progressively worse.
You start wearing more clothes as the season goes on.
I was in a hoodie by the end of the year. Yeah. I wouldn't even take my shirt off in the shower.